The longest ceremony that you'll ever experience at this temple doesn't mean the event is the longest. When we have lots and lots of people here during the holidays, and we have all this wonderful food they cook for you, and I have multiple speakers that I invite to come up and talk, but the actual chanting itself takes no longer than what the short part of what we did, I guess is the way to say it. We do 3 chants in Vietnamese and 3 chants in English because we have a mixed congregation. But I want to tell you about this ceremony. And traditionally in Southeast Asia, and well, actually in every Buddhist country, I'll back up just a little bit, the Sangha, which with a big S means the monks and nuns, and with a small s means everybody that follows the path of the Buddha, gathers together on the new moon and the full moon. And this has been going on for 2,600 years, because I've never seen a picture of the Buddha with a watch on. And so he and he didn't carry a calendar, but you could look in the sky and see that we were coming up to a new moon or a full moon. And so those 2 events were important. Now, a number of things happened before, like the full or the new moon. For the monks, they would shave their head and their face. The monks were required to do this every 2 weeks. Other places now, a lot of time has passed. And the Japanese, they shave their head, like every 4 days. But, the Japanese, they take a good idea and just run it into the ground. And I know some Americans that belong to Japanese-influenced temples, which is what most of the Zen temples are, and they get up every morning and shave their head. But that's not a requirement of the Buddha. It was to cut your hair every 2 weeks, thereby renewing your commitment to being a religious seeker. That's what that's symbolic of. We have lots and lots of symbols within Buddhism that are concrete. When the Buddha left his home and his dad, wife, and all the riches he had, the first thing he did was cut off his hair. They still do that in India. Older people very often will go off and go on a religious quest, and they cut all their hair off. And that's how you know they're on a religious quest. In India, though, they never cut it again. And it just keeps growing and growing. So you can go up and say, this guy's been doing a long time. His hair comes down to his knees. But the Buddha, and I have to tell you the truth, I'm kind of making this up, because people over the years have asked me, well, why shaving the head? And we're America, we don't need to do that. Well, yeah, the fact that we have to say out loud we don't need to do that means we do, because of the attachment we have. I learned that going into the Army when I was a kid, and everybody got their head shaved. And all of a sudden, all these personalities disappeared, because, we think of Elvis Presley. He's the only guy I know that went in the Army and didn't have to cut his hair. It's a big joke. They show him with a barber clipping off a little bit of hair. But, they let him keep his big head of hair. So, twice a month this was done. Twice a month we renewed the precepts. Now, for the lay people, we have 5 precepts, and you heard them. And someone answered up when I talked about becoming intoxicated. That's good. If you were a long-term practicing Buddhist, I don't know, meaning you're around here all the time and you see this coming, usually what you would do is, if you had something to confess, you would do it the day before. That's what the monks are advised to do. I've broken a precept, I need to tell somebody. And for the monks, it's very complicated. Monks have lots of precepts. There's 250 that are all written down that when they get ordained, they have to promise to keep those. But there's other ones. you know, as you go along. But for the lay people, the Buddha had given the five important precepts. And when you become a monk or a nun, you take those again. Because they're really the important ones. You know, for a monk, it's not adultery, it's improper sexual conduct. And it really is for lay people too. But my teacher always used adultery because Americans seem to have a problem with this. I credit it to Playboy magazine and their philosophy. But now that it's run by his daughter, I think things are getting a little less carried away, I guess you'd say. I haven't seen a Playboy magazine in a lot of years, but so twice a month we do this, and this is recognizing our humanity. Buddhism is, if nothing else, practical. And you can have the best intention and trip up. And my opinion has always been that the hardest one to keep is don't say things that harm other people, without a doubt. And almost everybody needs to confess that. Now, the way it goes with the monks, if they do really horrible things like kill somebody, they have to go to the Sangha. Well, they kick them out. There's 4 things, I won't go into that, but there's 4 things that if they do it, they just have to take the robe off and go away. And taking a human life is one of those things. Intentionally now, not an accident, not you were in a car crash and somebody died, but you intentionally did it. Murder. But you're still supposed to confess it, and then the Sangha, which means 5 monks and nuns, will say, okay, you have to leave. Then there are another 245, and as you go through them, it starts off, well, you have to go to the Sangha, which usually means older monks, wise people, and you have to say, well, I did this. I went behind a bush and I kissed a girl. Ooh. Well, you need to think about what you did. And they will give the punishment. We do not use corporal punishment. It might be to spend so many hours reflecting if you've really done something hurtful. And that's a key word in Buddhism. What we're trying to do is not hurt others. If you've done something hurtful, then they would put you out in the forest. They'd say, okay, you go out in the forest for 5 days. And don't eat anything. You can drink water. You're not starving yourself. But you go out there and you think about what you did. And then you come back and you tell us what your opinion is of what you did. And that's just about the most drastic thing. The most drastic thing is to be shunned. And shunning used to happen in this country back 400 years ago when it wasn't even a country. Because all of the colonies were religious colonies, and if you broke the rules of the religious colony, they would shun you. And if you read your history, then you had to go to another colony because nobody would talk to you. And that may not sound so bad, but how are we doing with the COVID-19 sheltering in place? How is that going on? Aren't you glad you have a phone? Imagine if you did not have a phone and you could not go and see anybody. How long would it be before you started going bonkers? We are a social animal. Buddhism as a religion is a group religion. It's not practiced by 1 or 2 people. It's practiced by a group. The group is terribly important because we encourage each other. You know, the practice of meditation, which we do here, and we encourage people to do, people will come to me at a retreat, or just say, hey, can I talk to you? And they'll say, you know, I'm trying to do meditation at home. I can do it for about 15 minutes, and then I can't do anymore. Everything comes up, and I go, I know what you're saying. You think about the laundry you have to do, right? Well, yeah. And you think about what you got to buy at the grocery store, right? Yeah. And you think about, well, your kid's got a soccer game tomorrow, and you've got to arrange it. Yeah. But if you come here, and you sit with 1 other person, or 2 or 3 other people, all of a sudden you have a solution to a real basic meditation problem, which is getting distracted. And if we want to get mystical, you know, woo-woo, we go, well, the shared spiritual energy, blah, 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 blah. Well, all you have to do is talk to somebody that has a hyperactive child, and that's not woo-woo, right? There's nothing woo-woo about a kid who comes in, bounces off the walls, and shares that experience with you. And so now you're trying to calm yourself down. And it could be an adult, same thing, calming down. When we sit in meditation together, we encourage each other. My first teacher used to say, you know, you might want to move. Maybe your legs hurt. Most people, unless they're very young, when they start sitting on the floor, even though in our meditation hall we have a platform, you're still sitting on the floor. Their leg maybe goes to sleep. My legs used to go to sleep all the time. And I would try to move them to get them to stop being asleep. And I knew when I did that when they started coming awake again, they would hurt like crazy. And then I really needed to move them. And yet I was dumb enough that I kept trying to move. Oh, just move it a little bit. Just a little bit. Oh, it'll feel better. But my first teacher used to say, out of courtesy for the people around us, out of respect and care, we don't wiggle and move. We don't do loud breathing. We don't, do this because we don't want to bother their meditation. Now, I heard that a long time ago. And the reality is that's the heart of the meditation practice, is taking care of others. You meet somebody that says, I'm the greatest meditator in the world. I can do this, I can do that. I don't need anybody. No, he's not. No, she's not. They're probably the most selfish person you've ever met. To sit with someone, just to encourage them to sit, is to give. To not wiggle around. To not breathe funny. Oh, and I've had them. For years I went to LA and retreats, and you got somebody in the room going, and everybody's going crazy in that room because of that breathing, that loud breathing going on. And it's all about just paying attention. So this ceremony we did, there's a traditional ceremony that back when I was younger, I had no problem with it at all. And within that, we recited all these 88 names of the Buddha. We recited some of the names of the Buddha in here, but back in the good old days, 88 names. Plus we did a bunch of other stuff. We ended up doing 108 of those vows. When we did it like I had you help us, where the monks all did it, and then the lay people all did it, and the monks all did it, it took right at an hour to do. Of course, it was all in Vietnamese too, you have to understand. Yeah. So when I had a temple on Peace Street in Long Beach, we moved up here in '82, but back then, I tried to do that on a new and a full moon, following the tradition. And the first time I did it, I had 3 or 4 people show up and they did all these vows with me. And then the next time we went to do it, I had a couple of people show up. And then the next time we went to do it, I had 1 person show up. And he lived at the center, because my little center was 2 duplexes in a house. And so we had people that wanted to live where I was at. We'd get up in the morning before all of us worked, going off to work, we'd meditate together. So I realized that nobody wanted to come and do 108 vows. It's a lot of exercise, particularly if you're not doing it all the time. So I thought, well, I've got to simplify this. So what I did is I got an English translation of what we were doing in Vietnamese. So at least they knew what they were doing, because there's no point in doing it in Vietnamese if you don't know what you're doing. And we almost have no chance that we do here that aren't in English. Okay, there's no hidden mysteries in Buddhism. So I cut it down to about what you have here. I think it's 10 Buddhas. We're doing it 10 times. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it is. Haven't counted in a long time. Tom Mung is going, he's trying to count it. Yeah, it's about that. And that worked out. And then in '91 I was invited to go to Washington State and Vancouver, Washington, not to be confused with Vancouver, Canada, and a 3-week retreat. And then I stayed another week and we went around and saw all these different temples and stuff. They wanted to introduce me. And the abbot there was quite young. He was still, 34, 35. And he was translating a poem that a Vietnamese monk had written. And if you recited with me today, that's the poem that he was doing. And it covers a lot of Buddhist ideas. Some of them, not so important, some of them pretty important. And I was involved with translating. Well, I was involved with translating with my master, who was Chua Thien, the first Vietnamese to come here and establish a meditation center. And everybody goes, well, do you speak Vietnamese? No. And I didn't speak any more Vietnamese when I went there, even though I'd taken 2 years of lessons, It's like when I go to the Mexican restaurant, Amy's in town, and I go, hola, you've got it, that's it. Okay? And so that's about my Vietnamese too. So what did I do? Well, I took care of syntax. Syntax is the order of words and do they make any sense? Because if you've ever taken a dictionary and tried to translate another language, you know that you end up with a mess. And I've done a lot of translating with the dictionary since my master passed on. And you have to have a sense of intention. Because if you put down the literal words, people are just going to go, what is this? This makes no sense at all. So that's what I did. I helped him with this. He'd say, well, what do you think of this? And I go, whoa. And I knew what he was trying to say. It was obvious. So we smoothed it out and put it in English. Now, this is far from perfect. Someday when I'm old, nobody's going to laugh at that. Okay. Someday when I'm old, I'm going to go in here. There's some lumpy parts in here that could be smoothed out. But then I have to go and get all new chant things done and all that kind of stuff. So I'm lazy. So I go, well, maybe if the temple burns down, then I can redo it. But we started using this poem. I brought it back. I've almost always had a monk in training living with me. And some of them lived here a long time. The first monk that I ever trained was with me 23 years. And he was more than my disciple, he was my best friend. We did everything together. If it was time to take a little vacation, I like to go up to Salinas and Monterey and up in there. And it's very beautiful, and I go through the museums and the aquarium and all that. We'd go, I used to be able to go out on the beach. I can't even tolerate the sun anymore. Again, what's going to happen when I get old? Who knows? They're going to keep me in a dark room. I tell these guys, yeah, you just take me out a couple times a month and put me in front of the altar and hand me a stick of incense. So we did this, and I brought it back, and Bodhi, and I said, read this and see what you think. I'm thinking about maybe we'll use this for the ceremony where we renew the precepts. And he read it and said, oh, it's very beautiful. Okay, well, that's all I needed. So then we went ahead and made this document that you saw. The confession in here is a traditional confession. All the evil karma created by me. Okay? If you're a saint, and Pope Francis has written you a letter talking about beatification, you probably don't need to do that. All the rest of us need to recognize that we trip and we stumble at times, and particularly with the verbiage thing, that it's so easy to start gossiping. And the rule is, my teacher used to say, if you wouldn't say it to somebody, don't say it to anybody else. It's pretty easy. You know, so-and-so, did you know what they did? Well, no. Will you go up to them and say, you know, I heard you did this. I don't think that's wise. You gotta be careful. You know, if you're mom or dad, it's only to your children. Everybody else, you have to be very skillful when you talk to them. So, then we recite the precepts. We changed one of the precepts in here, and if the Vietnamese knew I changed it, they would be critical of me, and they would be right. The great master Nhat Hanh went in and rewrote a whole bunch of stuff, and the Vietnamese community, which respects him a lot, is not happy with that. Their response was, who does he think he is, the Buddha? Why is he changing these things? Well, when we take precepts, and the way you take precepts is you get up in front of everybody and take 3 refuges, and then you promise to do your best to keep these precepts. Nobody is asked to pretend to be perfect. You just do the best you can. And I used to say, because the Buddha said no alcohol. The Buddha did not say no alcohol and drugs. A lot of American centers say that. That's not what the Buddha said. He said no alcohol. And that's because Indians are like Japanese, who are like, who else did they tell me was like that? Turns out almost everybody's like this. They got a bunch of men that go get drunk. Oh, that's Mexico too, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the Buddha said, don't drink. That was his easy solution to the problem. You know, I have very close friends in Barstow. We all know where that's at. The Mendez family and their daughter Katie. I was there for every birthday she ever had. I ate huge quantities of carne asada and drank a lot of beer until I decided that I needed to stop drinking beer. But everybody got real happy, but the women ate and the men drank. And the Buddha said, don't do this, because you get too drunk, you go into town and you look at dancing girls. Now in India, if you've ever seen pictures, this means they were almost completely naked. You got all excited, you got into trouble, you went and gambled, you know, you ran off to Vegas, lost all your money, so you took your deed to your house and you signed that off. And by the time everything was done, you had destroyed the inheritance of your family. And here is our missing monk. This is the Venerable Tom Tree. I'm so glad he's here because we're going to take a new picture of everybody today.
Oh, good.
So the Buddha said, okay, moderation doesn't seem to be part of our way of doing things here in this culture. He said, so just don't drink. If you don't drink, you don't get stupid. And the women, this one woman is doing this, she knows them. Men who drink get stupid. And guys, you have to admit it. You know you do. Now, when I used to drink, I didn't get too stupid, because some of the guys I knew, they'd get in fights. You know, all their bad experiences for the week. I'd get my guitar out and sing. The more I drank, the more I sang, until I passed out on the floor with my guitar on my chest. But we don't all have good luck like I had, okay, because I was never mean. But I had friends, they would get mean, and I'd say, okay, you need to knock it off. Go take a walk, go do something. So the Buddha just said, don't drink. So the monk that came up here with me, who was here 23 years and helped me build this, and we did it, bought hammers, bought a saw, power saw. He went out and bought a handsaw. I said, are you out of your mind? We'll be here for the rest of our life sawing boards. Sometimes in the summer he'd say, you want a beer? And he used to live, eventually he lived in that house that we have our library in, a couple of monks have bedrooms. And he would get a 6-pack of Henrys. And I'd say, sure, and he'd go get a beer, and we'd split it. And I would tell people when they took precepts, you know, if you have a beer, this is not a problem. It's when you have the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So if on a hot day, if you have a beer, you're not going to get drunk. But keep that in mind. If you can't drink just one, then don't touch it at all. So that's what I changed. And I had a good friend and disciple who's Dr. Jackie Rhonda is in Las Vegas teaching at the university there now. She was here for years and was my right-hand gal and took care of me when I didn't have monks around here. And she said, well, you always tell us that we could have one beer. Why don't you just put that in there instead of saying not to drink intoxicants? So that's the way I changed it. Don't become intoxicated. Yeah, that's simple. So that's an explanation of that. There is, I turned the page here. By the way, I'm giving a talk that I did not plan on giving, and I'm looking at the clock, and that's good, because I worked really hard this week to come up with different talks to give. But there's one thing in here that I'd like to point out, and they're called paramitas, or perfections. Paramita means perfection, and they're kind of things that we strive for. We strive to have the energy to continue on, to not give up. And we strive to be generous, which is to have dana. In other words, we don't have a closed fist all the time. We help other people. You know, one of my monks has been working on a construction project, he told me this morning, because I gave him okay, tell me what's been going on since I haven't seen you in forever. And he said, well, they were doing this construction project and they were making some money and everything, and then the guy that was leading the project, he went blind, and couldn't work, and this and that happened, and he says, and I gave him back the profit. That's Buddhism in action. Okay? I had an uncle when I was growing up who used to tell me, you know, a friend is somebody, if you need $20, they'd give it to you. Everybody else would give you $5, even though they had 20. As a kid, I had to really think about it. Well, can you give me $5? But, you know. And my mother taught me, if you loan money to a friend, don't ever expect it back. It'll ruin your friendship. So when you give money to a friend, just give it to them. If they can give it back to you, that's great. If they can't give it back to you, don't worry about it. Don't carry it around. And so this precept, or piece of the poetry, and it's not a precept, but it's a paramita, says, let me be happy when somebody is successful. Or when they do good deeds, let me be happy for them, as if the good deeds were mine. Okay? And that moves you away from thinking about yourself all the time. How can I be a better person? Take joy in the good luck of other people. In other words, don't sit around complaining what you don't have, or you didn't get it. You know, you and your friend applied for a position, a promotion at work, he got it. One of you is going to get it, one of you is going to lose. So take joy in the fact that he got it. Sometimes that's very hard to do, right? It sounds good, but it's still very hard to do. But joy in the good luck, good fortune of other people, it's pramudita. It's one of the jewels that we strive for, to move away from thinking about ourselves all the time. So they're all through this, but I was looking at that and I thought, well, we'll do that. And next week, I was told that somebody that went to our website, which is getting an overhaul. It got overhauled and it's not very friendly right now, so it's getting overhauled again. It asked for me to talk about koans. So those are those little Zen problems you read about that are kind of cute, you know, and you go, well, that's kind of cute. What did that mean? Well, I'll talk about those next week. And do we have anybody doing koans here now? I don't think so. No? Well, but we did have someone doing it. So we have lunch, it's Vietnamese. If you don't like Vietnamese, eat it. If you do like Vietnamese, still eat it. We're going to offer incense now. I have to ring the bell, I got my signal.
At 3, we start with the Macarena.
We got that covered. We're on it.
Nah,
We always gotta do a selfie.
Look at it.
get closer, Mike.
Okay.
That's
Wanna
Can I get in?
take some, if you can, take maybe like a couple photos.
got it?
of
And then we'll
the
send them
group,
to you?
And then, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
just send them to
Yeah.
me, yes.
You got
Got it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Try to not look threatening.
I gotta get adjusted here.
Did you want to do your hair?
Wait, let me part it to this side.
There you go, there you go. Love it.
Get your lines crossed there, buddy.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to take pictures?
You guys want- We can do a big group picture
Okay,
of the
now,
second.
this is all one family.
It
Yes.
is.
How do you have so many beautiful women in this family? I don't understand.
My son is Mike, Milani, then the girls, these are my grandkids.
This is my wife and these are our 3 kids.
Yes.
Nice.
All right, we can all get in.
So,
They just came
yeah,
from
we
Arkansas.
want a picture of the whole family, because I'll put in there, a family came to visit us.
Perfect.
From
Yes.
Arkansas.
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Okay, so we'll do just us and the kids first.
Okay, go
And
ahead.
everybody?
Come on.
Okay. Oh, is your mom gonna take them? And then I'll take it with the selfie stick when we all get in.
Yeah, and I'll send it to everyone.
Perfect.
Tell us where you want us to stand, we'll just sit.
Right, this is it, yeah.
Yeah, just go ahead and sit down in front.
Okay, ready? Alrighty.
And then I'll grab the selfie stick and then everyone will come in.
Okay, come on.
Come on, Frank.
Isn't there they have a delay on that, don't they?
Huh?
Don't they, those cameras have a delay?
Well, we have a selfie stick.
Come in.
These guys are not rookies.
We're in 2009 with this thing,
I guess
so.
you are.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. We'll take another one. 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Okay.
Stick has a button on it.
Yes.
Look at, he's thinking, he's.
They're under $20 for those.
Is that wireless or?
Wireless, is it wireless?
Bluetooth.
It's Bluetooth.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Bluetooth. And it works on any phone, iPhone,
I don't know what
Samsung.
Yeah.
Bluetooth and wireless, I don't know what.
Oh, you can put that on a tripod,
It's different?
No, no,
right? You
yeah,
can put it on a tripod and push the button on that and it would make it go click.
Yeah, but the thing is, how to hold the phone doesn't problem with this.
A tripod.
Oh,
Yeah,
on
to
this?
put it up here and then it should be, you
Yeah,
can
because-
connect it.
Oh,
I'm sure you can get a thing that holds the phone, go on a tripod.
Yeah.
Sure. They got everything in the world for those phones now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yep.
You do?
That's true, I know what you're talking about, yeah. Where you can get it and you can take the picture from your phone and it'll.
I used to have one for a film camera,
Uh-huh.
for big pictures like that, and I'd stand to the side and get everybody, okay, settle down,
And
and then
then,
I'd just push the button
Yes.
and go click.
Yeah, yep. Now that button is wireless.
Yeah,
Now Bluetooth, now they click Bluetooth, so,
sure.
And what is the name of your family?
Vega family.
The Vega family?
Yes.
I was like, where is
And your names are?
Michaela, Mackenzie, and McKinley.
Yep, yep.
Oh, awesome.
And then this is Milani, and then I'm
Milani.
Mike, so we all have M.
M.
Very confusing,
Yeah.
very confusing.